Hello, welcome to a new episode of Geek Lunch Meet. I'm your host Chris. As usual, I hope you're all well, wherever you are. Now, this week saw the re-release of Brian May and Friends, the Starfleet project sort of mini album, which got me thinking about Starfleet and talking to a few people about it this week. People are roughly my age. No one seemed to remember it. If you mention a sort of science fiction puppet show from the 80s, everyone so apparently say, oh, you mean Terrorhawks? And whilst Terrorhawks was a great show that we watched as kids a lot, no, I mean Starfleet. And it seems to be a show that not a lot of people remember. So I thought we would take a look at it and just see if jog our collective memories and have a good old reminisce about something that I enjoyed as a kid. And of course, if you like the video, don't forget, hit the thumbs up. Gets it seen by a lot more people. Helps us out a great deal. And if you've not already subscribed, why not smash that subscribe button like a giant Japanese robot stomping on some evil alien types. So on to Starfleet. So it originated in Japan as a show called X Bomber. It was created by manga artist Go Nagai, who I believe also did Devilman and created Mazinger Z. It was released in Japan in 1980, consisted of 25 episodes, and the show uses puppets very similar to what Gerry Anderson did with his Super Mario Nation shows, such as Thunderbirds, Joe 90, Captain Scarlet, and all that sort of thing, and Terrorhawks already mentioned. I think this is why people get Starfleet confused with those shows. But basically, they took the episodes of X Bomber, rewrote new scripts, changed storylines to suit, dubbed them into English, and very much like what Sandy Frank Productions did with Gatchaman, which became Battle of the Planets. And I think that's the reason why this show sticks in my head so much, same as Battle of the Planets, is because I may not, as a kid, may not have realised that it was like originally Japanese, but obviously something about the visuals and the show and the storylines completely different than the sort of usual rubbish that we were getting from sort of the BBC. Here in the UK, it aired on Saturday mornings. Saturday mornings were always when kid shows were on. Back in those dark old days when we only had 3 channels. Originally, kids TV was sort of limited to Saturday mornings, and then you would have sort of just before tea time during the week. I always remember Saturday mornings as a kid was always the great cartoons and things. Little Banana Splits I remember was on, as I say, Battle of the Planets we got. And then you'd have to wait until all the Saturday sport was done until then in the late afternoon. And you get the A-Team Man, the Fall Guy and Street Hawk and Buck Rogers and all those fantastic shows. But getting back to Starfleet, so it was 25 episodes in Japan. We got 24 episodes over here. They dropped one, I think I read somewhere, it was basically mostly a flashback episode, essentially just filler. So that was dropped for over here. I'm not sure if you're watching this video in the United States. I can't see that it was ever actually shown on US TV. It was released years later on some compilation videos, and you can now get it on DVD. But I don't think you actually got it back in the day as a television broadcast. So plot-wise, the show is set in the year 2999, and you've got the Earth Defense Force, which is patrolling the galaxy and protecting everyone. Some nefarious aliens turn up, demanding the return of F-01, which is a sort of mysterious MacGuffin which runs throughout the show. And the show does have a sort of overarching plot line that runs throughout the entire series. And most episodes end with a good cliffhanger, which is great. No one knows what this F-01 is. So the experimental X-Bomber spacecraft is enlisted to fend off these alien invaders. So from its base on the moon, the X-Bomber is launched with its crew, Shiro, Barry and John. Not the most inspiring hero names, but nonetheless, they're roped in to pilot this craft and save the day. So don't forget, we're talking the early 80s, so we are only several years post Star Wars, so sci-fi was absolutely huge. Companies were falling over themselves to produce science fiction content, and Starfleet is no exception, and it's got quite a lot. You can see quite a lot of influences from Star Wars, as well as Shiro, Barry and John on board X-Bomber. You've got Princess Lamia, who's got this bodyguard who's this sort of big hairy creature, not not unlike a Wookiee. There's a droid, PPA, I think the perfectly programmed android, I think it stands for. He's very much, he's a little guy, he's very sort of reminiscent of an R2 unit. When they're having space battles, the sort of gun wells on the X bomber look, the shots look almost identical to when they're in the in the gun turrets on the Millennium Falcon firing away. So it's easy to see why a production company in the UK would buy this Japanese show and retool it for a UK audience. The bad guys are great, led by Commander Makara. All of her minions, sort of insect-like creatures, and their ships are really great designs. And also all their spaceships are really cool, all sort of insect-inspired as well. And for me, the best thing about the show, and I remember drawing pictures of it as a kid, was that basically bits of X-Bomber will come apart sort of into separate ships, and will all form up and form the giant robot Dai X, which as a kid I thought was just the greatest thing. Again, it's a bit like in Battle of the Planets, where all the members of G-Force got their own vehicles, and then they all connect together and sort of combine to form the Phoenix craft. Anything like that as a kid, I absolutely loved, and still do to this day. What's not to like about a guy, in a giant robot suit stomping his way across a miniature wasteland? Some of the voice work in the show will sound familiar. Mark Rolston, who played Drake in Aliens, and Al Matthews, who was Apone in Aliens as well. And then Garrick Hagan, who you might recognise as Biggs Darklighter from the original Star Wars. As I said, the show ran for 24 episodes here in the UK, and it's got a proper storyline, and it ends properly as well. So it's not one of those shows that are sort of just cancelled and then you sort of don't know what's happening at the end, which is great. And as I mentioned, you can get it on DVD really reasonably. It is also, I think someone has uploaded, I think nearly all, possibly all of the episodes on YouTube. So if you want to, you can check it out for free on there. And as I said at the start of this video, and the one thing that sort of anyone that actually knows Starfleet is probably what they know about it most, was that basically Brian May used to watch the show with his kid and absolutely loved the theme tune. So he decided to record his own version. So of course, if you're Brian May, you ring up one of your mates, Eddie Van Halen, and get him into the studio and re-record a really cool version of the theme tune. They also recorded some sort of very bluesy bass tracks in the sessions as well, and released it as the Starfleet project, which as you can see has Dai X here on the front. And these were starting to get a bit hard to come by, which is great that, say, this week they've re-released it. It's all been remastered. There's extra tracks on there as well. There is a vinyl box set that comes with more stuff, posters and that, I think, and has got loads more sort of outtakes and various different versions of the songs. If you're that way inclined, I think it'll probably set you back, I think it's about £80-90. And is also up on Spotify as well. So that is Starfleet, one of my favourite shows as a Star Wars and science fiction obsessed kid. And it still holds up. I watched quite a few episodes of it this week, as I say, on YouTube. And it's still a very entertaining show. Did you watch Starfleet as a kid? Have you watched it on DVD since? Is it something you sort of only know tangentially through the Brian May music? Why not drop a comment below and let me know? Always good to hear from you. So that's it for me. Take care. Until next time, eat geek and be merry.